Alrighty, so what we're doing today.
I don't know if she actually watches the video.
We're looking at measuring the spread of data using Boxplots. We had just introduced the terms here yesterday by the time we got down to this point. So let's start by using some data and finding some of the features that we're going to use, okay? So, starting out, what's our range? And how do we find it?
Range, you take the biggest value minus the smallest value, so in this case 98 minus 78.
Okay.
So our range here is 20.
Good. 98 minus 78 gives us 20. Good. Now, here we have 9 values, so how are we going to find the median?
Fifth highest.
Okay. The fifth highest one, if we have 9, you divide by 2, it's 4.5, round up, it's the fifth one.
87.
So that would be, good, that would be our 87. Now, here's where I want to get some feedback from you guys, because we have a decision here, and it's important that we understand this because it'll really affect not only the answer for this part, but also other things down the road. When we're looking for our first quartile, we're supposed to find the median, right, of that bottom half of data. So the question is this: do we find the median of everything, including the median of the data, or do we only find the median of those 4 numbers?
The numbers up to
You're saying only those 4? Okay.
So I remember last year, if it was one number and you didn't have to do an average to get the median, you would do it like this. If it was 2 numbers, then you would include one number on each side, but not the number you calculated.
Okay. So you're kind of in agreement with Ashley that we would only use those 4.
In this case, yeah.
Okay. All right. That's correct. Now, I had the same class 5A, and I was chatting with Miss Skokin because it was in her room after this. She had a good way of kind of talking about the median that made this make sense. The median is almost more of a concept than it is an actual data point, because as we know, sometimes the median isn't one of our data points. So if we think of it in those terms, we have to look at the data below where our median is, okay? The median is right here on 87, so we need to look at those 4, those data points below, okay? So what is the median then of those 4 values? Okay. Any of the rest of you guys awake here? Okay. Here's our median, 83.5. Okay. We use the same rule to find the third quartile. We only use the values that are above the median. Okay. So our median in this case is good, Biggie, 95.5. All right, 95.5. Halfway between 94 and 97. By the way, down here it didn't make a huge difference. It would have only been a half off if we had included the 87. But notice, if we had included the 87 in finding our third quartile, that's the difference between saying that the third quartile is 94 or 95.5. You know, there's a significant difference there. Okay? Now, we also have the IQR. Remember, the IQR is the range between Q1 and Q3. All right, so in this case, what would that end up equaling? Yeah, the interquartile range would be 12. Good. You have 12. All right. Any questions? Yeah, the interquartile range, we hit this just briefly at the end. It's the third quartile minus the first quartile. So, yeah, in this case we do 95.5 minus 83.5. All right, let's try one more here. This one has 20 values. Okay. So our median is going to be where?
11th and 10th value average.
Okay, yeah, between the 11th and 10th values. So let's take a look at that. Our range is 15 minus 1, that's 14. Keep the colors going. It's 14. So the median, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 10 and 11. So the median is 6, but notice it's between those two 6s. This is where thinking of that median in terms of a concept is helpful. All right, the median is right here. Okay? So when we find quartile 1, are we going to use 6? Yes. We're going to use all of these, including this 6, because technically this 6 is below the median, because the median was between those two 6s. All right? So that means that our median in this, or I'm sorry, our quartile 1 in this case would be 4. Okay? Halfway between 4 and 4 is 4. Okay? Then we have our third quartile. Again, we're going to include that 6 because it's above the median. And what is it this time? Yeah, 9.5. It's halfway between 9 and 10. Okay, so that's 9.5. All right. And finally, our IQR is 5.5. Now, why are we spending the time to find all these data values? These are key values when we're talking about finding box plots or drawing box plots. And these are things that you've done in the past. But let's review here the idea of the box plot. Okay? One key term, and this is on our vocabulary, is the 5-point summary, or 5-number summary, I should say. The 5-number summary. The 5 numbers summary includes the minimum value, the lower quartile, the median, the upper quartile, and the maximum value. Okay, obviously the min and max are easy to identify. It's the highest, the lowest and highest points. But those other 3 are what we were just working on identifying. Okay? Now let's look at this, because this actually represents the data that we were just looking at, these 20 values here. Okay? So, you can see here was our min at 1, our max was at 15, and this is how I would, if I were sketching it, this is how I would do it. There's our min and our max. We found the median next. Okay, so I'd put that on there. And then we found our lower quartile, they're at 4. We found the upper quartile at 9.5. Okay? And then we could draw the box and the whiskers. Okay? So here's our box. And here are the whiskers. One thing I will point out here, notice there is a number line showing the scale and showing where the values are. And you need to make sure it's very clear where these values are. Okay? The numbers that you found. Do not draw your box plot on the number line. Okay, it needs to be above the number line. Don't draw it on the number line. But let's take a look at what all this stands for. The rectangular box from the quartile 1 to quartile 3, this is the middle 50%. Okay? This is where the middle 50% lies. In that interquartile range. This lower whisker shows us the bottom 25%, and the upper whisker shows us the upper 25%. Now, how is this useful? Well, take a look at the whiskers. How would you describe the bottom 25% in comparison with the top 25%? Okay, it's a little closer to the median. How else could you compare those?
Like something 1/2 the quartile range if the upper whisker is outside of that and it's an outlier or something like that.
Okay, we can identify outliers with the interquartile range. We're going to do that actually in a couple minutes here. Notice the upper whisker is longer, right? What does that mean about the data? What does it tell us about the data in the upper 25% compared with the data in the lower 25%? Yeah. I'm sorry, what? Yeah, it's more spread out, okay? Those people in the bottom 25% were kind of grouped together a little more. The top 25% we have spread out a little more. Now, the one thing this won't tell us is exactly how they're spread out. Because the reality is we could have most of the top 25% all be in the 10 or 11 range, and then just one guy up there at 15. You know? So we can't tell exactly how spread out it is or anything like that. But we can tell that the top 25% does have a wider spread than the bottom 25%. Okay? All right, so let's see how much you've picked up so far. Okay? Get out something that you can do Socrative with. And go ahead to the link. We'll do a race here.
Race. You go to that.
Okay, we're gonna do.
Is there a link for us to click or?
Yeah, remember the link is on the home page or on our class website. The very first link, and if you're on your phone, if you do the scroll down, it's the very first one. Hickson NBPS. Okay? You get this going. What do you guys want to race? Bears?
Bears.
Bears?
We're racing bears.
Alright, we're racing bears this time. Okay. So I'll start it. Oh,
Hold on.
how many teams?
Okay.
We'll do.
You gotta join.
The link is on the website.
Alright, you'll have a color at the top, that's your team, so you know how your team's doing. Okay? So you can go ahead and start.
Whoa. Whoa.
Come on, yeah.
Whoa.
Internet is taking way too long.
Yeah, the room number is at the top, or the room name is at the top now. By the way, if you do it on your phone, I recommend just going through a browser, not through their app, because their app crashes a lot. You have to click on a student login.
Yeah, I did. It's loading. It's being really, really slow.
By the way, if there's a picture that's hard to read or something, you can't click on it and it'll blow it up for you. You can use your phone instead. Lines out in front.
Maybe finish by the time we get on.
See where it says home, little drop down? Yeah. What? Right here? It's Pixon and BTS at the very top. So like, you know, there's 6 and 8 scores. So if you add all of those up, it says plus X divided by 8 will be 12. And you could write an equation now. Yeah, divided by how many scores there are. That's one thing you'll see a lot with the IB problems is like, you'll have a formula that you learn, they'll give you the result and most of the stuff that you need, and then you'll have to solve for something in that formula. Very rarely do they just give you some information and say, use the formula to find this answer, you know? Right. Oh. Well, I must have hit a roadblock or something. They were ahead there for a while.
I didn't go with too long.
Huh?
I heard you go with too long.
See, oh, you're done now. Did you have a colored bar across the top?
No, I was just very focused on answering.
No. Yeah, when you log in, it'll show the colored bar across the top of it.
You have lots more than my last one.
Last year's class was huge.
Yeah, we had 22.
23. Was it 23 perspective?
No, I never went over 22 because I only had 22 desks. But yeah, once
We have the problem in English class right now.
Catherine and
Classes are small.
Spencer goes, and then we hit 22.
Spanish is just.
All right, how many are still working? Okay, did you get it to work?
I don't know. She must be on line team.
Oh,
when I asked you the first quartile, so I meant like the entire quartile.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, this would be like fun to like complete. You're like complete. Yeah,
Oh,
there's
wait,
really
this
fast
mouse may
questions
do that,
there.
yeah.
Really rush me.
I don't work well when I have to go fast. Give me
You
a
feel
little.
rushed, like, I got a couple of questions wrong, because I didn't like finish reading it, I was like,
Well, that's the thing with the IB exam. You'll find that they actually give you quite a bit of time to do what they're asking you to do.
Which is great.
So, I mean, you can't just slowly get around, but you don't have to feel like you're rushed, especially because they give you the reading time at the beginning.
Like, given the time, I can figure out just about any math problem, even if it's something I have no idea how to do. But if you push me for time, even if it's basic algebra, I will crash.
Wow.
It sucks. So that final exam without a calculator was interesting. Can't remember what I got.
Okay.
Chris, open it, I'm sorry.
Oh, you took it into your schedule? Okay. Is it people that have like a line background or something?
Good on you.
Are we all set? Everyone done? All right, great. Let's see how everyone did. I'll move it over so names are not revealed. All right.
Wow.
Okay. Good. Good. This was the most commonly missed one on for 5A as well.
The wording was just
Yeah,
weird.
yeah, it was just the wording.
It's actually almost a quote from our notes. So.
Oh.
All right. So yeah, this one. Let's see. This was number 6. What does IQR stand for? Okay. Let's see. Oh. I think you're marking that one.
You're still right.
Okay. I think those are the ones that gotten marked wrong. So I tried to on the open response ones. I put multiple answers in to try to like make sure it's got them all. But
I don't think they all put the abbreviation.
so well, you shouldn't have put it IQR because I asked what it stood for. So now for this one. What represents the middle 50% of the data? Not the 50% mark, that's the median. Or the score that's greater than 50% of the data. What's the middle 50% of the data? That is the IQR. Okay, you could have put IQR or interquartile range. All right. So, you guys did real well. Okay, you did pretty well. All right. Are there any questions? Okay. Now, what I want to finish off the day looking at is kind of using the box plot and comparing it to look at distribution, and then also talk briefly about outliers, and that's what we're going to finish. Okay? Notice here how when we had data like this before, we were just kind of guessing as far as the distribution, and I told you guys that it didn't have to be perfectly symmetrical, okay? You don't need your laptops now, so focus please. But when we see a box plot of that same data, notice how much easier it is to tell the symmetry, okay? So the box plot is really helpful in helping us identify symmetric distribution when it's not really, really obvious, okay? It becomes a little more obvious when we look at the box plot. Now, we see the same kind of idea with positively skewed data. Remember, positively skewed means we've got a few of these high values, 6, 7, 8 here, that pull our mean higher than it should, than where most of the data is. Okay? But you can see here the lower whisker and the middle 50% are all kind of clustered there, and then this one whisker on the upper whisker is a lot longer. Okay, that's an indication of being positively skewed. On the other side here, the upper whisker and the top and the middle 50% are all kind of clustered here in the 6, 7, 8, 9 range. But then you've got these 1s and 2s and 3s that pull the mean down, so it's negatively skewed by those low values. Okay? But again, it's easy to see it when you look at the box plot. All right, so what about these real low values? How do we know if those are outliers? Okay, we're going to use the interquartile range. All right, so if you take a look here, it says outliers are extraordinary data that are separated from the main body of the data. Outliers are either much larger or much smaller, so they can be on either end. And a commonly used test is to use the IQR. Okay, another way is to use standard deviations. We're going to use this. Okay. Now, notice it says we're going to use 1.5 times the IQR, and on either end, this is a real important thing because you can get lots of falsely identified IQ outliers if you do this wrong. You're adding 1.5 times the IQR to the upper quartile. A lot of people want to add it to the median, and that's not correct. You add it to the upper quartile. And for the lower boundary, you're going to subtract it from the lower quartile. Okay? So you'll notice here in this data, in this box plot, we have 6.5 for our Q1, and here we have 10 for our Q3. So the interquartile range is 3.5. All right. Now 1.5 times 3.5 would be, what is that? 5.25? I think it's 5.25. 1.75 plus 3.5, so 4.5, 5. Yeah, 5.25. Okay? Now, 10 plus 5.25 would take us to right here. 15.25. All right? Notice two things. The point past that is marked with an asterisk, or you can use a little X. Either way is fine. But also notice we don't just draw the whisker all the way to the boundary. Right here, each whisker is drawn to the last value that is not an outlier. So evidently, we had a 16 in our data, but the next highest piece of data was a 14. So we're only going to draw the whisker to the 14. Okay? Now, if we subtract 5.25 from 6.5, we get 1.25. So here's 1.25. All right? And this value here at 1.5 is just below that. So again, we mark it as an outlier. But the next highest value must have been a 3. So we only drew the whisker to 3. We didn't take it all the way down to 1 1/4. Okay? So, there's our box plot with the outliers identified properly. Okay? Does that make sense? All right. So it's not too hard of a concept. It's really not too hard of a concept. It's just a matter of remembering, add and subtract from the quartiles, not the median. All right, and don't draw the whiskers all the way if the data doesn't go all the way to the boundary. Okay? That's really all you need to remember. Okay? Now, real quickly here, just kind of walk through one with you here. There are 33 bean pods that Enid was examining, okay? And she was counting the number of beans that were actually in the pod. One pod only had 2, one had 13, and then you see all the rest here, okay? Now, if we have 33 pieces of data, our median is going to be that 17th one. Okay, so the middle is 6. So if I'm drawing a box plot, I'm going to put 6 here, and I'm going to go ahead and put the bar for my median right there. Okay? Now, we want the lower quartile. So the median of the bottom 16 is going to be where? There's 16 values here.
Be on the 8th and 9th value average together.
Yeah, halfway between the 8th and 9th. So 2, 4, 6, 8. So halfway between 5 and 5 is 5. Okay? So we put that there. We do the same thing up here. 2, 4, 6, 8. Halfway between 8 and 8. Alright? So here's 7, here's 8. Okay? We've already done this, so we're kind of going quickly through this part. Alright? Now, IQR equals what here? IQR equals 3. Alright? So, what value am I going to add and subtract? What? Not just the IQR.
Oh, God.
1.5 times, right? So what's 1.5 times 3? Come on, guys. What is it? 4.5, okay? So our boundary is going to be at 12.5, and down here it's going to be at 0.5, okay? So that's, now you don't need to draw that on your box plot, but that just gives you an idea. Then you can just figure out, identify your outliers, and draw your whiskers, okay? Alrighty. Hey, check online for your independent practice. Also, I put together the survey that you guys wrote, and there's a link to the form for you guys to take the survey. It'll take you all about 2 minutes. All right, so try to do that over the weekend. I'm going to put that active. It's actually on Socrative, so when we get it started. Oh wait, hang on.
It's data from something else. It's a fog.
See you guys. Bye.
It's been sucking up my time over the past
I should be working, but you know the world's in ruins. I gotta do something.